national issue is the alarming percentage of American children who are not vaccinated. So we pose the question, should the fear of child developmental disorders prevent parents from vaccinating their kids? Despite the importance vaccines have for the country's health, not everyone vaccinates. The CDC reports that only 55% of American children from birth to preschool are vaccinated for the top 9 vaccines. That leaves 45% of children unvaccinated. On top of that, the Child Health Evaluation and Research Unit did a sample survey and found that the majority of parents, pediatricians, found that at least one family did not vaccinate their child. So why is this happening? Why are parents choosing not to vaccinate their children? Well, first of all, the CDC's recommended immunizations has vaccines that list severe side effects, and this feeds onto the parents' concerns. On top of that, the American Academy of Pediatrics says by the time children are 2 years old, they have to have at least 23 shots, which may seem excessive. So what's their argument? What is their reasoning? Well, for one, parents say that vaccines are linked to child developmental disorders. And they say that the studies out there that prove wrong are invalid because they're sponsored by pharmaceutical industries. And the government, even though they say it's safe, is secretly working with the pharmaceutical industry just for profit. So what type of people are saying this? Well, these are organizations, they are professionals, they are concerned parents, and these are wealthy, well-educated liberal communities. And deciding not to vaccinate is a huge decision. So where is their research coming from? Well, there are documentaries, there are anti-vaccination articles out there, there are books by medical professionals, such as A Shot in the Dark by Harris Cutler, who is a PhD in medical historian. There is Dr. Wakefield's infamous study that linked the measles vaccine to autism. So the issue here is that these people, they're not looking deep enough into the research of the ingredients, they're not looking at the valid, unbiased scientific studies, and they're not thinking about how their actions are affecting future generations.
So, as Chelsea mentioned earlier, there is a great controversy concerning the credibility of these sources. And the heart of the anti-vaccination movement lies a great deal of focus on the ingredient quality and quantity within the vaccination solutions and whether or not they endanger the children's future development. As mentioned earlier, Dr. Andrew Wakefield's 1998 study focused on finding a positive correlation between the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine and the development of later brain damaging disorders. He concluded that and it was because they feared that it was mercury. Mercury, as defined by the CDC, is a compound that's used as a preservative to prevent vaccinations within the vaccination solution. The most specific form of mercury in vaccination is called thimerosal, and as found by the Federal Department of Agriculture, it's used in most vaccinations in the United States and the United Kingdom. So, what is the fear of thimerosal? Well, thimerosal, as stated by an anti-vaccination organization known as Shaw Truth, claims that there are neuroimmunological disorders known as autism, allergies, diabetes, intestinal disorders, and food allergies. They also suggest that the amount of thimerosal found in vaccination exceeds the limits of the Environmental Protection Agency. Other working ingredients include aluminum salt and formaldehyde, both of which can be found in their elemental form, and parents fear their toxicity can endanger their children. Now, the vaccination movement has been fueled by Wakefield studies and the ingredients found in these vaccinations. So are they truly dangerous? Well, according to the FDA, parents actually have a higher percentage of formaldehyde on them than vaccinations do. Furthermore, because of the concerns and complaints of parents, the CDC stated that within the last decade, thimerosal has been removed from most of the vaccinations used in children from the ages of 0 to 18. And those that still contain thimerosal have in such small quantities that it has posed no threat to the child. And the FDA found that breast milk has twice the amount of thimerosal than in vaccinations. Also, an Argentinian study found that mercury is excreted quickly by an infant, suggesting that the vaccination pose no imminent threat to the growth and development.
So while there has been a great deal of support in the anti-vaccination movement, there has been no scientific studies proving a correlation between vaccines and any mental or physical disability. So while people that support the anti-vaccination movement are searching their sources for information to support their claims, many of them come across information from people that are either searching for fame, notoriety, and money from the scientific community. Their research is often flawed or entirely incredible. An example would be Dr. Andrew Wakefield, as previously mentioned by Amber. A 2004 investigation by Sunday Times reporter Brian Deere identified undisclosed financial conflicts of interest on Wakefield's part. Many of his co-authors then withdrew their support for his investigation based on the study's interpretations. The investigation centered on Deere's numerous findings included that children with autism were often subjected to unnecessary invasive medical procedures such as colonoscopy and lumbar puncture, and that Wakefield acted without the required ethical approval from an institutional review board. Many of the other researchers were unable to replicate his findings or confirm his hypothesis, leading to the suspension of his medical license and a retraction of his paper. The popular anti-vaccination novel A Shot in the Dark by Harris L. Coulter, previously mentioned by Chelsea, contained medical data based from half a century ago. Since then, medicine has advanced to ensure the safety and effectiveness of these vaccines, proving that to be ineffective evidence for the anti-vaccination community. Many unbiased and scientifically valid organizations have come together to prove that vaccinations does not have any correlation to any mental or physical disabilities. The National Library of Medicine, National Institutes of Health performed a study on the linkage between irritable bowel syndrome and vaccinations. The study ultimately proved that vaccinations does not have any correlation to irritable bowel syndrome, which is an immunological disorder in the child's developmental stages or later in life. These studies, along with those recorded by the American Association of Pediatrics, show that there is no correlation between immunological and neurological disorders and vaccines. According to New York State's Department of Health, today's vaccines are among the 21st century's most effective and cost-effective and successful public health tools for preventing disease and death. Thanks to immunizations, debilitating and often fatal diseases such as polio that were once common are now distant memories for most Americans. So, while there isn't just studies disproving the movement, a great deal of evidence also does so.
It is important to know that vaccinations are a form of protection. It is encouraged by the CDC that women get vaccinated while they are pregnant. The antibodies that they get from the immunization is passed from the mother to the child through the placenta. These antibodies help to form a less severity of susceptibility to the disease. Children are protected through social interactions of the immunizations. It allows them to move freely and interact with their peers so that there are no diseases contracted. Life-threatening diseases such as smallpox and polio have been eradicated from our nation. However, recent events such as the measles outbreak at Happy's Place on Earth, Disneyland, shows that these diseases are eradicated from our nation, however not from the rest of the world, and they are traveling. These diseases are a journey away and can spread. So parents who have not vaccinated against the measles now understand the life-threatening issues that face their child because they chose not to vaccinate. The CDC defines herd immunity as a situation where a sufficient portion of the population is immune to specific infectious diseases, making the contagious spread of the people unlikely. This basically means that there are safety in numbers, and it boils down to that if you protect yourself by immunizing, you're protecting the rest of the community. Herd immunity prevents you from passing the disease to those who cannot fight it off because they have a weak immune system, such as an elderly grandparent or a young child. You help the community, not only yourself, by vaccinating. Vaccinations are a great innovation of modern medicine. With the elimination of diseases, it will no longer be a threat to the population of future generations. If we continue vaccinating now and vaccinating completely, parents will be able to trust that the future is safe. To solve this problem, we strongly suggest that parents be educated on the importance of vaccination awareness and rates. Studies do not show positive correlations in child development and vaccinations. As Chris has mentioned, that anti-vaccination movement is outdated and unreliable. Ingredients pose no viable threats. Parents can stop worrying and trust the safety of vaccinations information. We have the armed forces to protect our nation, parents to protect us from the harsh reality of the world, teachers to make us more knowledgeable, and vaccinations to help us perform these roles. Thank you.
Thank you. I got a couple questions for you. Can you give me any specifics about what one source that provided you the most amount of information and what some of that information was?
We had 32 sources in our paper, and most of them were from the CDC, because the CDC has statistics from like all over the country, and a lot of their statistics are from like multiple like vaccines. They have like from like every vaccine, and
Sorry.
Thank you. Tell me something that surprised you in your research.
It surprised me that so many people were in the anti-vaccine movement when the research for it was on a case-by-case basis. There were no like specific studies. Like the studies held 12 people, and that information is not reliable. But so many people were on this bandwagon, and they just didn't understand what the information was presenting to them.
Of the people that should not get immunization? Okay. As you went through the process, were there any additional questions that popped up?
Well, when I first started, I was pro-vaccination, and so I didn't understand why people weren't getting the vaccination. But as I researched, I realized that the argument they made, it does seem like it's a viable reason, like the thermocol and the ingredients, it does seem like that can be dangerous. But the fact that they didn't look under, like they didn't look deeper, that's where I started to question, like, why aren't they looking deeper, or why haven't they tried to undermine the pro-vaccination side? And it's because of the fact that they don't want to look deeper, that they're just really trying to prove their point by having these studies done to show that there's a correlation without doing further testing.
In the end, would you say you're pro or anti? That's still for you, Amber. Are you pro or against?
I'm still pro.
Okay.
I understand why.
All right. How viable would you say your sources are? I know you talked about the CDC as being one source, and I would say that's a pretty reliable source. But what about those other ones? You said 32. That's one source.
Yeah, there was like the National Health Institute, we looked at the American Academy of Pediatrics, and on the anti-vaccination side, we looked at all the different anti-vaccination organizations that are true advocates of anti-vaccinations and what they have to say about it. And there are a bunch of like books out there about anti-vaccination, there were documentaries out there, and there were a lot of those.
Thank you very much. Stay back.